Well, I think that we are live. Hello, everyone. This is Matt Dichter, VP of Sales at Staffing Engine. I am here with Adam Butera, Director of Digital Operations at Lead Health Staff. Adam, why don't you say a quick hello?
Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully, Matt and I can provide you with some value today.
Yeah, and thanks to Jan and the team at WSS and Candidly. I'm thrilled to be here. We were all blown away by the job that Jan did last year in attracting leadership and recruiters to this conference, and happy to be a part of it this year. Definitely, as far as house cleaning, feel free to participate in the chat and the Q&A. I already see our friends Callie and LJ dropping in, and we'll definitely be checking that as we roll, and we'll be addressing any questions that come in. One of the other things that I've seen in a couple other sessions is people dropping in their LinkedIn profiles. Definitely feel free to do that and connect with each other. Adam and I will go back afterwards and connect with you all, and feel free to reach out to us directly on LinkedIn. We're excited to get started. And we're going to be talking about all kinds of things on this. The headline is how to impact candidate and client experience with both automation and recruiting acceleration. Recruiting automation has been a term thrown down in people's recruiting vernacular for years now. Acceleration is kind of new, and I think that my company's Staffing Engine is bringing that to market. Before we start and really getting into the technology side of things, Adam, why don't you give a little bit of your background and sort of how you got to Lead and what you did before Lead?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I was a recruiter many years ago. Actually ran a full desk, and after a brief stint of doing that, I actually went over to Monster on the vendor side, and I was working in the staffing vertical specifically. Started out doing some training for some of the largest staffing companies in the world, and then quickly moved into an account management role. Had a nice long stint there at Monster, great group of people. Ended up going over to some startups like Sense, and worked there for quite a while. And then sort of after the COVID transition, ended up having Lead reach out to me looking for somebody to help with set up their instance of Sense that they had just purchased. And we got to talking, and there was a lot more opportunity to really just put some of my knowledge from the vendor side and implementations and things to good use, and help Lead try and build out their tech stack. I was fortunate enough to come on at a time where they had just decided to kind of scrap their tech stack and start over fresh. So it really couldn't have gone better, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect as far as a blank canvas is concerned. And just got really lucky to join a team like that, and to have the opportunity to kind of flip everything that I had learned and take it and put it into practice. So I jokingly say, after all those years of talking to people and getting frustrated that people weren't listening to me, now I'm the guy that doesn't listen to anyone.
Yeah, you took a little bit of a road less traveled, starting on the agency side, going into recruiting tech, and then coming back around into a staffing agency. I mean, we'll talk more about the technology makeover that you've helped Lead kind of go through, because I think that's one of the more enticing parts of today's conversation. A little bit of my background. I joined Bullhorn, so recruiting technology, shortly after college. Was really one of my first jobs in the professional arena, and that's where I got to know the staffing and recruiting industry. Had a great 8.5 year run over at Bullhorn. Joined Staffing Engine back in September. The executive team here at Staffing Engine had a lot of experience, both starting and co-founding TechStus and bringing that awesome tool to market. And then Jay Cutler, who's our VP of Partnerships, who I formerly worked with at Bullhorn, was really instrumental in showing me all the cool things that Staffing Engine had built. And so excited to be here and share a little bit more about, as a tool, what we're working on, but also, Adam and the team at Lead were Staffing Engine's first customers, so excited to share their story. But before we get into that, why don't we talk a little bit about Lead's growth? Because I think that's one of the most exciting things. And when you look at SIA and the fastest growing lists You see lead health staff everywhere. And yes, the healthcare market is booming and is the fastest growing segment. But even despite that, you're still at the top of all the lists as fastest growing healthcare companies. Talk a little bit about that, Adam, and sort of the roller coaster ride that you've been on.
Yeah. Roller coaster for sure. I mean, 100% this would be team effort, right? It's all thanks to our amazing recruiters and account managers that are just grinding day in and day out, not even to mention compliance team and payroll and everybody else that's put in plenty of hours to try and keep up with things as we've grown a little bit faster than we were expecting for sure. But yeah, it's been challenging, but we jokingly say it's been the best stress test possible. Really, we've got to kind of push everything that we've built a lot faster and a lot harder than we ever expected to. And that's, I think, given us a great platform to kind of start to build more and more that can scale. And we know that as time goes on, we'll be able to scale it.
Yeah, obviously there's tons of, competitors out there, bigger and smaller. What do you think sort of has separated you all and allowed you to grow, and what role has technology played in that?
That is a great question. I think we are fortunate enough to have had some wise people before myself, and Leben, our CEO, and Kyle, our COO, and Justin, our Chief Growth Officer, to really make some hard decisions to scrap the tech stack and start fresh and give everybody a fresh start building this out. And that was really, in my opinion, the game changer, because that allowed us to really overhaul our data, start with clean data, and then build on technology, right? So we were fortunate to have some great team members come and help build out the company from the recruiting and account management side. Beth Schneider on our client services side to help us. But then, being able to build some technology to help support and take a lot of the administrative tasks off people's plates, as we jokingly talk about.
Yeah, I see Lauren chiming in. Clean data makes all the difference.
It does.
What are some of the I guess challenges or things that you had to, I guess, address as you went through your technology makeover? And also, what are some of the strategies for people that are tuning in as to how to get maximum adoption of technology tools? Because that's something that I think everyone really struggles with.
It is, and I think we've been really lucky that we sort of started from the ground up. When I came in, I had a lot of ideas about things that I wanted to do, and I'm sure everybody else did as well. But I think we did a decent job of taking a step back and asking questions, and just trying to hone in on what our team was doing, what struggles they were having, what obstacles they were facing, and trying to solve those problems for them. I think one of the biggest things with implementation is buy-in. And you're never going to get buy-in from your team unless they're on board from the beginning, and them actually knowing what I guess, having an input in where those problems are, what problems they're trying to solve, makes a big difference. So we got a question from Lauren of where to start. I think, start from the basics. Start with the team and sit down at their desk. What does their day look like? What does the average day look like? What are they doing? Just take a look at where they're clicking, where they're pointing that mouse, right? Where they're going, what tools they're using in that day. And you'd be surprised that a lot of the things people don't know, they don't know, right? Not realizing that some of these small things could be changed or tweaked, and we could save you a minute, 2 minutes here, which extrapolated across your week or your month or your year is an enormous amount of time saved. And then how could that time be better spent, right? Those are pretty simple questions to ask, but I think just dropping that right in, dropping those questions into a very basic framework is huge.
Yeah. And is there anything that having been on both sides of it, are there things that you learned when you were at Monster and Sense on the technology side that you've been able to bring into your day-to-day at Lead to help benefit and grow the team, and also enable them from a technology standpoint?
Yeah, for sure. From certainly having that experience has changed my perspective on how we adopt technology and which partners we choose to partner with, right? Which vendors we choose to partner with. I think that background has changed that completely for us in that, we start from the ground up and look at process and what we'd like to do. Where are these roadblocks? Where's the friction points? How can we remove them? We get some ideas and we sort of develop a process that we'd like to put in place. And then we find partners that we'd like to be a part of that and help us grow towards that. But the interesting thing about the experience is it's shown me that there's nothing perfect out there. So as much as you have a design of what you want your process to be, I hate to use the word compromise because I don't necessarily think it's a compromise. You have to remember what the end goal is. Why were you trying to solve that problem? What was the friction you were trying to remove? And perhaps how you get from A to B is a little bit different than how you originally thought it would be. And I think that's really important and something that I would not have known had I not come from that side of things, to know and understand that there's limitations here and there, right? And good partners can be flexible and agile when they can, but there's certain limitations to any technology and a certain amount of patience that comes with that. And you sort of have to have this mutual relationship where you work together and figure out how to get to that goal.
Yeah, and I can say, coming from my team standpoint and how we've had a working relationship and partnership with you and the team from Lead, it's kind of scary when you join a startup and you're getting your first customers and you think you know all the answers, and then you actually talk and watch how your customers are using it day in and day out, and also having that buffer and ability to get feedback directly from them. I know one of the things that has been great from the team at Lead is being able to consistently hop on calls to solicit feedback and run product ideas and ask, are these really going to be tools and solutions that help you solve problems, or do we just think it's really cool but doesn't actually fix what you're going out and trying to remove from as a bottleneck?
It's true. And I think you also get a lot of, on the engineering and development side, right? Some ideas about what would be really great or really efficient or effective. We all know that staffing is its own little animal, right? And it doesn't always do things the way that you would assume it would. And so for some reason over the years, and this was another thing I noticed on the vendor side, is staffing companies too often want to keep everything very close to the chest, right? And don't want to give up their trade secrets about what they're using or how they're using technology. And we've taken a very different approach of, we're an open book. I'm happy to tell anybody who we partner with, what tools we use, how we use them. I feel like you can have the exact same tech stack that I do, and the way that you implement it, the way that you roll that out to your client base is going to be completely different because your brand's different and your message is different, and it should be. And quite frankly, if you could do something better than we can, which there's many people that do, that's great. That raises the bar. So even if I tell you something and you go out and do it better than me, then amazing. That just raises the bar. And at the end of the day, we're trying to make the industry better. So
a lot of the tools on the market are extremely configurable. And when you talk about like just using ATS CRM as an example, the way that organizations deploy tools like Bullhorn, Target Recruit, Aviante, different instances of those tools can look so different. So they might help you accomplish the same goal, but the path to getting to that goal can look wildly different.
yes.
And it is amazing to me that so many agencies are willing to hop on calls and be references and recommend the tools that they're using, but just knowing the fact that they might buy that tool and not implement it properly or implement it differently to meet different goals is definitely interesting.
It is really interesting, and you never really know, right? Talking to folks when you're trying to bounce around ideas, but sometimes those completely different ends can really help a lot to open up some doors or broaden your thinking about how you can get from point A to point B, right? Or even the problems that you've had. I know a lot of times on reference calls or in those situations, people might be apprehensive to talk about problems or hiccups that they've found. And I don't feel that that's a problem at all because, again, no technology is perfect. So I'd rather know what speed bumps or roadblocks you ran into and how you navigated around them or what your workaround was, so that it saves me a bunch of time so I don't have the same problem. And then we get back to like the partnerships, right? So you guys are a great example of the types of partners that we want to choose, which is people that want to ask the questions, that don't want to roll out a product and say, here's what we built, go use it, here's how it works, and then kind of walk away, right? We operate very much like a startup does. So we want a true partner that wants to get in there, roll up their sleeves, and build something with us. And again, if we can help you build a better product that you can sell to everyone else, then great. Your product gets better, we get better, everybody wins, right? So it's really that collaborative effort, but you need a true partner that's willing to be creative like you guys are, right? And really kind of evaluate and take a step back and maybe have the humility to say, this is the way we thought we designed it. We're not 100% sure that this is the way you're going to want to use it. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting, just as a real life example, Staffing Engine went to market and, coined this recruitment acceleration platform. And to us, that meant, ways that we could impact the candidate and client experience and help sort of at the very top of the funnel, ensure that candidates and clients who are coming in got to the appropriate person faster to reduce friction and ultimately shrink time to submittal and time to hire. And I think that we started with that idea and we're like, oh, chatbots. Chatbots can be a great way to get there, can be a great way to take an already great brand like Lead Health Staff and even extend that brand in every sort of interaction they have with website visitors, or we call it, a digital storefront. That's really what websites have become over the last couple of years. And but in that time, we realized that we're not just going to be a chatbot company. We're going to be a company that provides other tools to agencies anywhere in the recruitment process where there's friction. And Engine Alerts, which we had a conversation with just a week ago, is going to be a tool that ultimately helps the individual ATS user respond to inbound inquiries, respond to applicants faster. And that's just been a great working relationship, and it's been great getting ideas from you all.
And that's a great example of your end goal, right? What Staffing Engine wanted to do, and maybe originally thinking it was chatbots, but then pivoting to or expanding to, I should say, to Engine Alerts. Really, well, now we're kind of clearing those bottlenecks on both sides, right? So we're taking care of it from the website side and from what would be our clients, right? Whether that's our actual hospital facilities or our nurse clinician partners. Now we're actually clearing the bottleneck on the recruitment side, which, this is a strange time in recruiting where we never thought we'd have an overabundance of qualified candidates that want to work with us. And that's very odd for being in staffing, but clearly this is where the bottlenecks are happening now is how do we prioritize? How do we optimize? How do we get the speed with which that recruiters can really adapt and understand what is the highest priority for me to address right now and what is a little bit lesser priority to address later, because that time has become so much more valuable to them.
Yeah. One of the other interesting things, and over the last couple of days in different sessions, we keep hearing about being able to meet candidates where they are. And it varies widely by industry vertical within staffing. People who are, nursing might have a different way of interacting with agencies that are versus, light industrial staffing or, IT, accounting, finance. One of the things I think that we've seen in working with Lead and our other early healthcare agencies is more and more millennials and Gen Zers who have entered the workforce wanting different channels of communication. Where are you seeing candidates go these days, and how are you using technology to meet them wherever they might go?
Yeah, it's definitely got to be that omni-channel approach, right? I mean, there's no easy way to just say, hey, everybody, just start texting now, right? Because obviously nursing is a great example. We've got, generation gaps between where some nurses might be and their, I guess, appreciation for technology, right, is very different. That they may be using an app, they may be using a desktop from one to the other. So there are also within that, how does that person want to have a relationship with you? Are they more transactional? Is that just the personality type? Do they have a lot of questions and need more guidance? So for us, we think it's very, very important for us to have that omni-channel approach of being able to meet people where they are. So if there's somebody that's all mobile, which a lot of nurses happen to be, right, then we're going to need like a time saved, and we're going to need an app to kind of plug in there so that we can meet them through the app. We could have the ability with Sense to be able to text message, things like that, right? But we've also got to have the robust website and the chatbots and those sorts of things too to meet everybody there because of all the traffic that gets directed there. And that it changes dramatically from one to the other, but I do think that there's a similar experience on all those platforms. At least that's what we're, I guess, trying to build on the most. To get back to your original question of what do I think is most important for us, a lot of that is trying to maintain a very similar experience across all of those platforms. So
Yeah.
it's not different for the person that goes to the website versus the app. They still feel like they're talking to our brand.
Yeah, and there's such a fine balance between how much you automate versus when you insert the personal touch and the
Yeah.
actual interaction, because we say it all the time. We're not in the business of trying to help our clients replace recruiters with technology. We need them to be able to do more with less, and be able to deflect a lot of those mundane tasks so that recruiters and salespeople can ultimately have more conversations and focus on relationship versus sending over some data around missing timesheets or pay or whatever it might be that can be automated. There was a really interesting study that came out by IBM that said that 80% of standard questions that come in can be automated by some sort of automate, whether it's a chat bot, whether it's an automated FAQ page, whatever it might be. And so we're trying to help recruiters and salespeople free up their time so they don't get bogged down scheduling time over back and forth over email, hopping on a call, only to find out that they could have deflected that question way earlier in the process.
That is 100% it, right? Is technology has come so far that we can, as we jokingly say, we can allow the robots to do quite a bit. It could never take the place of people and building relationships, and that's exactly what we need recruiters to do. And that's exactly the value that people get from working with a company like Lead, is the relationship itself, right? So the whole goal is to really streamline the process so much so that the robots do all the things that robots can do, and people spend their time doing what they'd like to be doing with people who want to be doing it with them, right? So they're not just on the phone because now they have more time to be on the phone. They're actually on the phone with people that want to be on the phone with them, getting career advice, right? Finding out where their next assignment's going to be because maybe something fell through and they really need something coming up quickly. All sorts of scenarios that can come about that you would need to talk to somebody in person or need some guidance from somebody that's been doing this a while and worked with hundreds of nurses. And that's where, Lead comes into play, but they certainly don't need to be, sending out information, right? Or sending mundane emails or even scheduling, right? Thanks to Staffing Engine, we have, the goal is to basically have nurses or nurse partners booking time on our recruiters' calendars for the blocks of time that they want to be taking calls, right? So now we're creating this kind of match of people that want to be talking to people who want to talk to them.
Yeah. The other big thing too that I think that we've identified is that, and we've all had these experiences when we deal with automation, but sometimes you're communicating with artificial intelligence or a bot, and you're just wanting that human touch. And so being able, and I know that we're working on getting Lead here, but being able to introduce a human in the loop or live chat experience where they can actually have a candidate or traveler be on a website, be able to communicate with a recruiter or engagement specialist in Microsoft Teams, in Slack, in GChat, in tools that they already know, and be able to service them and be able to basically take that chain of communication and store it in their ATS, and ultimately become a conduit between the staffing agency's website, their collaboration tools, and their ATS CRM. It's something that's very important to us, and we've already have some customers live doing that, and it's been a game changer for them.
Yeah, it's we get back to that, meet people where they are, and that to me is on the on our side of the house, right? As far as meeting our recruiters where they are, meeting our account managers where they are. Would you prefer to be in chat? Great. here's where you can be in to get your alerts or to have your conversations live, right? So it's kind of meeting our team where they are, and also trying to find out who's available, because there's nothing more frustrating than going to find a bot, asking to speak to somebody, and then sitting on hold, right? That person's gone off the website, right? I also think it's important to not try to cover up what is the robot, right? I mean, there's some automations that it's fine. It could, be seen as the recruiter or the salesperson. But when it comes to bots, I like the transparency of, you're talking to a robot now, let's get you a live person. We all know it, we all use them. So let's make the robot as efficient as we can and the bot as efficient as we can, so that it answers the pertinent questions, gets to the point, and then facilitates you to have a conversation with the right person on the other end, whether that is moving to a live chat or back to our scheduling tool or the right departmental person. We've got to make sure that we're getting to them when they want to be addressed, right? When they've got time available.
Yeah, it's one of the most important things when you're talking about AI and bots and that sort of thing is making the end user very much aware that that they're communicating with the bot, so that they don't think that they're communicating with a human. Because if they're expecting a human and they can't get the answers they want, that just leads to frustration. And so we've found that we have to make it very clear during that process to know that, okay, right now I'm talking to a bot, but if I want to talk to a live person, here's how I get there.
Yes. It does. I mean, it removes that initial frustration just to begin with, right? There's no confusion there. You're dealing with a bot. There's limitations. There may be a second delay, but I think it just makes things that much simpler.
So switching gears a little bit, and I'm sure that this is going to get Lauren Jones and some people excited. Talk about a little bit about the power of strong technology stacks and the power of integration between the tools that you're implementing and what that means.
Yeah, it's paramount. I mean, this gets back to clean data, and I know that's much easier said than done, and Lauren can attest to that. It's much easier said than done, but it does come back to clean data. But for us, I talked about this a little bit before, of finding these processes, and then finding partners that we can plug into these different areas of our business, right? And we've made the decision to not have one company do everything, but have partners that specialize in certain aspects of our business, right? So enable to do an onboarding, right, and a sense for engagement, the staffing engine, right, for our chatbot and for our engine alerts and a few other things too. But for us, it was important to have everybody kind of be in these areas. But it's most important that everybody plays nicely in the sandbox together, as I like to say, right? We've got to make sure that everything can at least communicate with, in our case, Bullhorn, right? But communicate with your source of data. So as long as everybody can communicate with your source of data, that's half the battle. Now, if you can get them to communicate with each other, that can speed things up as well. But, we found that as long as ultimately people can all have a good integration with that source of data, you can make things work. And there may be some concessions, but you can make things work. And I think for anybody starting out in this and trying to build that tech stack, that's kind of one of the most important things I would say is you need to have a strong ATS. Like, we love Bullhorn for that reason with their open APIs, right? It's been a great partner, great platform. For us, that's what makes the tool, is that API being able to communicate with all of our other partners, then being able to plug in where they need to for specific areas. But that's also scalability, right? So as we scale and as we grow, if there comes out partners that can do a much better job in that core area of our business, right? We want to be in a position that we can unplug and plug in somebody else. We're loyal to our partners, don't get me wrong, but there needs to be that level of comfort there too. There's nothing worse than being trapped with a technology that is failing you and flawed and is not able to progress, and you being stuck there, and that controls so much of the rest of your business, right? I think that scalability is so much of what I've seen in some other companies is they perhaps build something proprietary and it becomes a linchpin, and they just, it works for a few years, but they just can't scale beyond that because of how much everything talks to each other, right?
When we talk about integration, to your point, I do think that it always starts with that core digitization platform. So your Bullhorn or your Salesforce, that's sort of your central hub. And then you look at partners that spoke off of that. So that might be your recruiter communication tools, like Text Us, like Cloud Call, your automation tools like your Herefish and your Sense, acceleration tools. Yes, I'll hype Staffing Engine all day. But then when you can actually string functionality between those tools together, and then we have our early customers starting to look at how they can extend us. So as an example of that, we initially deployed as bots that existed on one customer's website, social media, and SMS business line. But they're also Herefish users, and they're like, well, what if we took the bot that we built to be on the website and actually send it out via email or via text message to a group of passive candidates, and that basically helps qualify outbound passive candidates or passive contacts. And we thought that was a really genius idea. So then you start basically combining your outbound marketing automation tool, your texting communication tool, and your AI acceleration tool all together. That's where you start really being able to do some powerful things.
You do, and again, if you can make that stuff work, as we're mentioning some things, right? We can make that stuff work if it all works with Bullhorn. But to your point, if you can have some, intercompany sort of playing nicely, then I think things work out better. Which the early days of Staffing Engine when we were first coming on board was a lot of conversations around that, right? Have you had any conversations with Sense? What do the APIs look like? Are you open to those conversations? And for us, for vendor partners, is a lot about, are you open to those conversations? Are you open to other partners that maybe even do something similar, but there's some differences that we use, and you can see how that could benefit you. We have to have creative ways to think about this stuff. So for me, a lot of that collaboration has created the creative ideas that we've come up with and some of the interesting things we're doing. To your point, to have that technology go from being what is designed to do and then taking it to that next level of really true automation that's improving our business process.
Okay, so LJ asked a good question here that I think we talked a little bit about, but this is an important question anytime you're entertaining deployment of artificial intelligence technology, which is, how do you maintain the humanity as you consider something as sophisticated as a bot to represent your company? How do we make sure that the bots do their job without losing the humanity that a Beth Schneider brings to the table? And I'll let you start, and then I'll chime in with some thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's about letting the technology do what technology is supposed to do, right? All those interactions that a human wouldn't expect to have a personal interaction about are the things that the bots can do, right? But if at any point there's something that should be personal or have a personal touch, it should absolutely be done by a human. And part of that is just trying to understand which parts of your process can be automated and have the bots take over versus which parts we need to deflect to, right? We're at a point where the conversation has gone as far as it's going to go with the robot. We need to get a human involved. And so a lot of that is taking away the friction between those two as well, right? How do we get it from robot to human in a frictionless environment, so that when that person is done, they already have time on the calendar to talk to somebody, perhaps, right? Or somebody's already calling them because they're ready to speak to somebody right then. So you kind of want to let the robots do what nobody expects a human to do, and then facilitate that as frictionless as possible to get to a human to make sure that we are still having that personal touch. We are still having real conversations. I mean, any good salesperson will tell you that, reaching out with what your company does is not going to get you very far, but understanding who you're talking to is going to get you much further, right? So you have to employ that.
And I think it all comes back down to, during implementation, really making sure that the people internally understand, the purpose of this is not to be a 24/7 recruiter, it's to be a 24/7 recruiter assistant, so that certain activities like questions around benefits, do we provide housing, where do I go to enter timesheets, those sort of easy to answer questions can be answered by, this deployment or this bot, and then questions around, pay and, rates and, the actual selling of the job and advertising of the job. That should be handled by a real person, over the phone or, via, web, a virtual conversation, whatever it might be. There's very certain types of activities that you want your recruiters and salespeople having.
Yeah, for sure. And it goes back to kind of one of our original points was asking internally, right? Where the problems are, where the friction is, where the bottlenecks are, and trying to solve those. So as you are deploying these in implementation, you can address this is what's solving that problem, or this is how we're solving that problem, so that they get that time to do those other things. But it doesn't have to be, this is what leadership has decided to do and this is what we're moving to. I think it's all part of that process from the get-go of really understanding your core business, what makes your people tick, and then taking it a step further. Once you get that technology, now that we've got free time, it becomes more about operationally, where do people go? What do people do? Right? The role of a recruiter is going to change. We're always going to need human beings to be recruiters because that's a human being's job. It's not a robot's job that builds those relationships. But what are the aspects of their job that they like as an individual? Right? And then how do you apply them operationally to different parts of your business to make it more successful now that you have the technology? And to me, that's really where things are starting to get very interesting, is to kind of scrap everything and start over with humans and what do people like to do? What brings them joy on a personal level, right? What brings one recruiter joy versus another one? And making sure that we can try and provide as much of that as possible in their daily lives.
One of the things that you and I spoke about last week that I found very interesting, and I think is a departure from a lot of the ways that different agencies think about things. We talked about, you mentioned compromise earlier, and we talked about, do you match your process with technology? Do you match your technology with your process? What does that look like? And I think that the team at Lead has taken a little bit of a different approach to that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, your journey there and sort of how you see those two interacting together?
Yeah, I think that's probably a big difference. Is we have taken that approach of, this is the process we want because of the end goals along the way. These are all the things we need to get to. At the end of the day, we're just trying to help nurses and trying to help patients, right? That's the core of what we're doing. So that's really is what's driving every decision that we're making. But so we have this process and this goal, and we know we need a compliance partner or an engagement partner or an ATS, and then we try and find a partner that fits into there. And that's where I said we've got to be open to that compromise and be malleable ourselves to say, we may not take a right turn, we may take a left turn here, but we're still going to end up where we need to go. And that's fine. But you can't have those preconceived notions about how a technology is supposed to work, because anybody on your side can tell you it's much easier said than done when you get to an engineering perspective. And there's a lot of ripples that happen with any technology, right? So if you change something here, what are the effects down the line or in other areas that get affected, right? So you've got to try and, in my opinion, both work together as a true partnership to understand, okay, what compromises are you willing to make? What compromises can we make? How can we both get there? And I don't think the compromises are all on your end, on Staffing Engine's end as well. From my perspective, coming from that side of the business, I'm a big fan of making concessions from our side, because I understand that it's easier for the company to monetize, right? It's easier to build that product and sell to the masses if they build something that integrates with Bullhorn and not with my homegrown ATS, right? And I'd rather that you guys build something that works for the masses, because this gets back to our industry getting better. The more you can monetize your product and you can sell it and grow your company, the better your product's going to get, which in turn means we reap the benefits of that. So we're willing to make those compromises from our side as well of, hey, we may have to switch this up a little bit internally, but as long as we remove this friction in the end, that's the important part.
Yeah, compromises being made is a very good sign that you're actually in a healthy working partnership. I don't know about other people in the chat, but um, we've all had really difficult clients before, and I've even had to fire some clients, whether they've been abusive to people or coworkers or that sort of thing, and it's not just the vendor having to make compromises for the end user or vice versa, but it really needs to be a working relationship where both sides figure out how to make it successful for both sides, at least in my opinion.
No, you're 100% right, and it's trust, right? I mean, I think that people get too rigid with, to your point, they have a set way that they want to do this, and they will push their partner as hard as they can to get what they want. And it could work, and there's a lot of partners that will concede and build what they need them to build, but I can tell you that in most cases, it's a short-term gain
Yep.
because you've got somebody to build something and it's going to work today, tomorrow, maybe even for the next couple of years. But I'd put money down that says it's not scalable. There's that trust of knowing, well, why can't you guys do it the way that I want to do it? And I guarantee you, if you start to peel back the layers on that, the reason why they can't do it is probably a reason why you shouldn't do it from your side as well.
Yep.
Because we get
Absolutely.
back to these ripples, right? Everything affects everything else within our business. So if I change this process, it's going to indirectly affect 5 other things within my business. And we can't account for all of those, but we want to make sure that we're not etching this in stone, right?
So we've got about 10 minutes left, then we'll open it up for questions. Why don't we finish off by talking a little bit about what we see coming down the line? And I guess to start that off, I would ask, what are some of the current challenges in your day-to-day operations that you foresee being able to solve with technology that you're either implementing now or thinking about implementing moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's connectivity, right? I think that's the vision that we have, is to really create a platform for folks. And I don't want to overuse a word that's being used quite often in our industry right now, right? But to create a place that can meet people, not just in the ways that they want to be met, but also delivering the information that they want to receive, right? So being able to tap into that and create a certain amount of connectivity so that, um, for us, people are drawn to Lead, and it doesn't have to be for their next nursing assignment, right? I think the
Yep.
long-term goal for us is to really build a community that's connected to each other so that, clinicians can come together and bond and talk to each other and get tips and tricks from each other. And, oh, by the way, they happen to get a job from Lead as well, but that's not what drove them there. And that's okay by us, right? If we are providing value to that community, that's ultimately the goal that we're building towards. And for us, that's about building this connectivity and this platform that people can really find the value that they need within it, right? Whether that's, I want to find the best place to get coffee, or I need the best dive bar to go to after work. I've had a hard day, right? And we want crowdsourced information. We all want that. We have it at our fingertips today, right? And everywhere we go, whether it's Amazon or Netflix, right? We have all of that crowdsourced information. And so how can we take that and apply that to our space, right? And really make it geared for our people. And a lot of that is ask.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest challenge is soliciting and getting people to want to give that information and give their time up, and getting that from as many people as possible so that we can make sure it's robust enough, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up connectivity. And in speaking with our CMO Andrew Kimmel always says there's really two ways to boost connectivity, and that's with real-time apps and real-time messaging. And this started back when I was still with Bullhorn, and I even think more strongly now than ever. But as we sort of move into 2022 and beyond, I really see staffing agencies utilizing apps to digitally transform. And I know that you mentioned time saved, and
Yep.
we're really eager to work with those guys and Bullhorn Connect and Workin and Gig Ronin. But these are all tools that we see a lot of agencies getting into and starting to embrace. And where that manifests with our company, I think today we've done a really good job building a strong top of the funnel candidate client qualification feed that can get people in touch with recruiters or salespeople faster than before. Where we're going in 2022 and beyond is being able to layer into those apps, because once someone becomes a provider or a consultant or a worker of a company, they're probably not going back to that agency's website for answers to their questions. They're going to be going to an app. That they're going to be going into the app for information about onboarding, credentialing if you're in healthcare, timesheets, payroll, that sort of thing. And so we need to not only live on websites, social media, and text messaging lines, but we also need to layer in those apps so that we can provide what I call a concierge-like service to consultants and workers once they've become an employee of the agency.
100%. I mean, we're all using apps today for everything that we do, right? Everything we're using apps for. So it's a shame that we haven't really seen as much of that as I would have expected in staffing. I think we're, with a lot of things in staffing, technology a little bit further behind than it should be, right? But for us, it's a no-brainer. We needed an app. To your point, everybody's on their phone, and that's that connectivity. But that's also another way to communicate with them, right? We're unfortunately starting to beat up text messaging in a lot of the ways that we've beat up email in the past, right? And spammed, and we're seeing a lot more and more of that via text. And so, I do see the app and in-app notifications going a long way to provide communication. But the great thing about that is now it's user controlled. So now they get to decide how they want to consume the information and when they want to consume the information. There was a question coming about.
Yeah, well, I think
using a bot.
I 100% agree with Charlene here, but easy FAQs, bot, complex things that require critical thinking, or a human touch. You need to use a human for it.
But that's back to our same experience, right? So we talk about the app. I mean, having that app and having that bot answer those frequently asked questions. I mean, plus we haven't even begun to scratch the surface in a lot of the somewhat creepy things that app can do to your location, right? But we say that as though it's some terrifying thing, but how much better off would we be if we were actually getting real time advice about where to eat based on where I'm actually walking to, or time cards that clock me in based on where I showed up, right? Those kinds of things. I mean, not that we want that much of a big brother kind of scenario, but more on the fun side of like, hey, these guys know I love to hike. I happen to have the weekend off. They're giving me some great tips on where to go, or I'm here, they're recommending some restaurant. I mean, that's a lot of value that we can provide that is far beyond what we're doing as far as placing nurses on assignment. But we get back to that, just bringing value. We're trying to make people's lives better, and that's the kind of value you need to bring.
Yeah, something interesting you said, but I think the staffing and recruiting industry as a whole, at least in the last decade that I've been a part of it, we really are technology laggards. And you look at industries like banking and healthcare, a lot of this automation acceleration stuff has already taken off. Now, there's no doubt that the last couple of years have accelerated a lot of that. And I think that staffing agencies have realized that, all right, well, in the past, you could only grow by hiring more recruiters and throwing headcount at it.
Yep.
Now you can actually implement tools that make your existing user base and existing recruiters more productive. And the companies that are both hiring recruiters and implementing technology to make them more productive are the ones like Lead who are growing the fastest.
Yeah, it's almost a staggered approach, right? So you have your team, and then you figure out where the friction points are and bottlenecks are, and you find technology to fill in those gaps, right? And then perhaps you bring in more people to come in and supplement in other areas, and then there's more bottlenecks and gaps as you scale and grow, and you sort of take this approach of one versus the other. And I definitely don't think that it's all technology or all people, to your point. And unfortunately, staffing has been very lacking in technology adoption, to say the least. But I was recently at an SIA event, and I think one of the overarching messages was the self-realization that the way that we've been doing things is not working. The way that we've all been doing things has not been working as well as we've all wanted it to. And so we need to take a good hard look at ourselves and how we're doing things and be open to change. be open to trying new things, to asking hard questions, to digging into solving those really tough problems, and being agile, right? Because the way we've been doing it hasn't been working all that great. And if you don't think so, just ask any of your candidates how they feel about the process, right? And they'll be sure to tell you.
Yeah. And I see, Andrew's down there agreeing with you on text messaging. I won't say getting played out, but moving more towards that email type of communication. And I'm just excited to see what new types of technology come out that address that. I wouldn't be very good at sales if I said that like cold calling was dead. I think that we still need to use the phones. We are our primary partner is a tool called OneReach AI. They had a really interesting post on LinkedIn recently where they were using some automation to do AI-based calling to basically confirm appointments and that sort of thing. And I could definitely see that taking off. And in fact, we were at SIA Healthcare towards the end of the year, and we had a number of people ask us about AI calling and whether or not that's going to be the wave of the future, and if we see that happening. And again, you're talking about balancing automation with the human touch, and you still want your recruiters on the phones. You still want your salespeople making calls. I don't see that as a replacement for that. But if we're talking about day of or next day interview and confirmation, that could definitely have a use case.
It could, but our COO Kyle puts it best when he says, "I buy from people.
Yeah.
I don't buy from companies. I buy from people." And that gets back to your robots can't make those phone calls, can't make those dials, right? And back to like how we were communicating with the app or even with text messaging. That's not necessarily that primary outreach. What that is back to kind of Andrew's, I think, point is like that's the sticky part, right? Is having that ability to communicate with people in the way they want to be communicated with. So if they pick up the app and they say, "These are the things I want to know about, and I don't want to know about these things." Well, now they're in control, and they're probably going to have a lot of brand loyalty because they're only getting information that they want to consume and the way and the time that they want to consume it, right? And there's a lot to be said for that as far as, people get into their habits as we all do, right? So if you have a partner that's treating you well, that's getting you all the things that you want, why are you looking elsewhere? And that's that stickiness part, right?
One last question before we open it up to questions. Obviously, Adam, I know that you look at technologies and evaluate a lot of different tech tools and recruiting tools that are out there. You've done a good job plugging Bullhorn, Sense, Time Saved, Staffing Engine. Are there any other really cool cutting edge tools that you've seen that you would recommend people go take a look at?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting to see the way that our space is moving around and being more open to transparency, which is something that we are 100% behind, just as far as simple things like pay rates that were always played closer to the chest, or being open to partner with somebody that might be considered a competitor, like a Fusion Marketplace, right? We partner with Fusion on the Fusion Marketplace for all intents and purposes. Fusion's a competitor of ours, right? But amazing partner building an amazing product, right? That we are happy to be a part of, right? That is the future of having that transparency and designing a tool that is built for nurses. I think Vivian is another good example. It used to be NurseFly. Building a tool that is really geared around who their client is, right? And for so long, job boards, and I can say this, job boards, we're building it based on who is paying the bills and not building it on who is actually the ones that were driving that traffic there, right? And that was the candidates. And so building a platform that's for those candidates, people will buy it as if you have candidates. And I think Vivian has done an amazing job at building something that clearly nurses love to use and want to be a part of. And for us, I'm all in for that. I want to be where they are.
It's amazing how Fusion Marketplace, Vivian, other types of freelance tools like ShiftGig, and have really taken off really across all verticals. It's all about making it easier on the end user to find work that they want to go to.
Yeah, it's easier on the end user, right? You've got to have that in mind, in my opinion. Una's another great one that's doing that, certainly with like the Una wallet, right? Is trying to build something that's geared towards those nurses and the problems and the friction points that they're experiencing in our case. And how do you solve that for them? That's the person I want to partner with, because they're solving the problem for the people that I need to solve problems for, right? It's not my recruiters, it's not my salespeople. I'm sorry, team. I love you guys all very, very much, and I want to make your lives all better. But at the end of the day, this is about nurses and patient care, and that's what has to drive our decisions, right? And we still want our business to operate. Don't be wrong, but that's who we have to appeal to, and we can't lose sight of that.
Cool. Well, Adam, thanks for the time, all the candor. We got a couple minutes left
Yeah,
here.
please.
Anyone in the chat have any questions for either Adam or myself? Fire away. And if we don't get any, we're gonna have to start making Adam tell bad dad jokes. So we would rather have interesting questions than that.
You would rather have questions, I can promise you. Appreciate all you guys joining today for sure as well.
Anyone?
Have we just done such a great job of giving you guys all the information that you need that you couldn't possibly have any questions? I feel like the GOAT Lauren Jones must have some questions. No?
We've got some ads.
Some ads.
LJ, thanks for yes, definitely thanks for firing us questions as we went. Love it.
Appreciate that, guys. Appreciate you guys being interactive for sure. And obviously, feel free to reach out and connect, as Matt said earlier, with both of us on LinkedIn if you have questions. Just want to pick our brains. As you can tell, I can be verbose, and I'm always happy to talk nerd, if you will.
What resources would you suggest for people to learn more? Great question. I'm gonna go from a well. First of all, I'm biased, and Andrew, our CMO, puts out some amazing content. I steadfastly and consistently download all types of awesome sales type of materials, JB sales, and then obviously a lot of agencies here have a sales team who outbound calling, that sort of thing. JB Sales does a great job publishing content for salespeople. Other resources, I use Vidyard a lot. Vidyard's great for salespeople rather than your typical phone, cold calling or emailing, being able to create short video clips and putting them in your outbound outreach. I think video is the wave of the future for anyone in sales or recruiting who are reaching out to people. It sure as hell beats a boring LinkedIn in-mail or email if you're able to include video in your outreach and stand out a little bit that way. I've had a lot of success using tools like Vidyard, and so definitely highly recommend that. And I see a few people here agreeing with me, but yeah.
I mean, you brought up a great point, and then you even get into like evaluating those tools, right? With things like Gong and things like that, where you can actually use those as really effective learning tools for your team, whether that's sales or recruiting, right? To dig into some of those video calls and dissect those and just help each other learn. Hey, here's how I answered this tough question. Here's how, I pivoted from this, or this comes up often or frequently, frequent objections, things like that, all kinds of stuff you can learn. But the other piece I would say is open your mind to things outside of your space too.
Yeah, so now we're flooded with questions and we're running out of time. But LJ asked about staffing-centric resources. I'm biased towards the You Own the Experience podcast. We actually just recorded an episode there. It's awesome. Matt from Sense just asked, video idea, free recommendations for video sends from a sales standpoint. I use video in all parts of my sales process, whether it's prospecting to get a foot in the door and display my personality. I think after a good discovery session or presentation, a great way to recap that is via sales. Something that I think sales and recruiting both do is send out contracts and deal sheets, and sometimes rather than just sending it over a contract over email, accompanying it with a video walking through the important pieces of a proposal or contract is incredibly useful. And I do that quite often. So that's just my thoughts.
I think authenticity is the number one thing I could say.
Yeah.
So think outside the box and don't be scared to be yourself. I would say if you're sending videos, have fun with it, right? You'd be surprised how effective an authentic video as a breakup email can really do for you with a client that you haven't been able to get a hold of, and you just send them a funny little video that's
especially
busy.
especially in staffing and recruiting where there's so much competition, whether you're SMB, mid-market, or enterprise, you're competing with a lot of other staffing agencies out there. And so you have to find a way to stand out if you're a recruiter. And so video is a great way to do that and enhance that.
Yeah, and stumble. You don't have to have it scripted. Like, be yourself.
You didn't have any really bad stumbles today. I'm surprised. What to do next time?
Clearly, Adam doesn't prepare, so.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate all the engagement and time from everyone who stuck around with us.
Thank you so much, guys.